Boom. It is Monday, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and that means it is time for none other than the real estate show. And today we are going to be covering everything you need to know about due diligence. Now, what is due diligence? Due diligence is all about making sure you don't make a stupid decision, right? We got to go through, double check everything, verify all the information. Is the asset what we think it is before we go ahead and close? So I'm going to be breaking down all the things we look for here at CPI, all the things we look for when we're doing due diligence on an asset to make sure that when we do get the deal firm and then we can close and then we start implementing our business plan, everything is going to act roughly how we think it will. Now, there's always surprises and stuff, and that's part of the underwriting process, but we want to make sure the asset is what we think it is. All right. So let me just walk through the process here. So we find a property, and based on our criteria, Paul, our acquisitions director, is going to find the property, right? He's going to look at it and say, okay, well, this is in the right area, this is the right size. We feel there's some value add here, some ways we can make money in the deal. I like this deal. We're going to do what we call a first pass. Okay, so if I draw our deal flow funnel, right, our first pass is right here. Now, the first pass in our underwriting process is really just doing a quick, down and dirty type of underwriting or analysis on the deal. We don't need exact numbers at this point. It's just, hey, does this deal roughly pencil out to what we're looking for? So we're using some very rough numbers. If we already know an asset in the area, or if it's our asset in the area, we can use some rough estimations for what we're using. We just want to find the rough general idea of the deal, because most of the deals are going to get cut at this first pass phase, right? It's just, hey, it's not what we're looking for, or hey, that there's no meat on the bone, we can't make money in this deal, done. But if we get through the first pass, if we run through that rough overview, and it's like, hey, like this deal still looks pretty good, we're going to move on to a second pass. Now, before we do the second pass, let me just draw our steps here. We're going to do an inspection, so a site visit. Site visit. Now, when we're talking about due diligence, this is where it really starts. Because once we've done the first pass, we've eliminated all the ones that don't fit. Now we're getting closer, right? So, we look at 100 deals, a whole bunch get thrown out. Now we've got a smaller number. Now what this does is now we can focus on all of our time and energy and effort into the ones that stand the greatest chance of turning into a closed deal, which is what we're really looking for. So we're going to go and do a site visit for the asset. Now, at the site visit, we're going to do a couple different things. With us, we actually bring some different people to these site visits other than just our acquisitions director and the other people involved. We bring out an insurance rep, right? Because we want to make sure we've got different eyeballs on the property. What insurance issues do you see? Because an insurance guy, he's going to see, building materials. He's going to see, sprinklers, the fire suppression system. He's going to be looking at the asset that way. So really good person to bring out, because he can bring things to our attention that we would probably miss. The other person we bring out is our property manager. The property manager, they're going to have a different lens again than what we look at the property through. Because with us, we're looking at value add, how we make money in the deal, that type of stuff. The property manager is looking at, well, how do we actually manage this property efficiently? Maybe they've heard some rumblings through the grapevine about the asset. Maybe they have some firsthand experience with the property next door. The property managers can literally tell you, hey, this asset is the exact same build and design as the one 3 blocks down. And with that asset, when they did these types of renos, they encountered these problems, and this is exactly what they did to overcome them. That's what a great property manager can do for you. So now we've had this before. We're standing in the unit and the property manager's basically telling us, hey, This other group did the exact same renos. They thought this, but it ended up like this, and this is the result they got. And we know this because we actually managed this asset, or we just took it over, or hey, we're managing the asset right next door, so we know firsthand what's going on. That stuff is invaluable when you're doing your underwriting, because now you can really hone in on true costs, true upside in the deal, per unit with renos, all of that type of stuff. So this is why we do a site visit. And number two, you can't just take the broker's word on it. So you're going to have the fanciest pictures. They're going to have a drone video that goes through. The property is going to look like $1 million, but they've probably cherry-picked the units that they're showing you. So on the site visit, you're not going to be able to look in every single unit, as you don't have a contract yet, but they're probably going to be able to show you, 3 or 4, depending on the size of the property, vacant units that you can walk through. And hopefully you can see, a vanilla, like a basic version, and an upgrade, maybe a second tier upgrade, depending on depending on the naming system, the nomenclature they use. You want to get into the asset because there's a big difference. If you've ever bought a house, the pictures that you see on MLS are very different to how the house actually looks and feels in person. Same thing with buying an apartment building. So you need to take the pretty pictures that they've shown you, right, where they present everything nice and rosy. Now you actually have to visit the asset and say, hey, these units look way bigger on the photos. This is how it actually fits. And then you got to shop your competition so you can compare an apples to apples on site. You can't just go based on photos because it doesn't work. Photos lie. We got different lenses. We got different effects we can use to make the asset look better than it is. So you got to go on site. Plus, when you're on site, you can look at a whole bunch of other things. What kind of cars are people driving? Is the parking lot rammed and full during a workday? If so, where's everybody working, right? What's the feel on the asset? You can walk around. You can, tenants will usually come up and chit chat with you. Now, you're not going to approach them and pry, right? You got to respect the ownership. If somebody approaches you, you're just going to have a friendly conversation. Do people look friendly? Are the kids, like if it's a family property, are the kids playing? Or is everybody worried about their kids? What's next door? What's the feel of the neighborhood? That type of thing. You want to get a good feel for the asset. And lots of times, you walk on a piece of property, you're like, I love this asset, let's buy it. Like, you just know. Whereas, sometimes you walk on an asset, you're like, ugh, like my spidey sense is tingling. I'm not quite sure what, but it's tingly. And that's going to prompt you to ask more questions and look at it a lot more carefully. Okay, so that's your inspection site visit. Now you're going to do your second pass. And then also, if you think you have a heavy lift, or, with Paul, we're very fortunate. Our acquisition director has a huge construction background, huge. So he kind of takes the role of the contractor. But if you're walking through, it makes sense to bring a contractor with you if that's not your strong suit or your forte, because that contractor can give you more accurate pricing. Because the thing with underwriting and analysis when you're looking at a deal, if you're just making up random numbers and just trying to put crap, like rules of thumb, through the front end of your underwriting, you're going to get crap on the back. And one of the biggest mistakes new investors make is they don't take care into building out a scope of work for the asset. You want to make sure you're putting as many accurate numbers through the front end of your underwriting model as possible, because that's going to give you the best results at the back. So if you're going in and you're planning on doing a whole bunch of renovations, well, you got to make sure that you're bringing a contractor with you who can look at the example units and be like, hey, listen, we've done a whole bunch of these before, and your property manager can also help with this as well. But you want to be able to say, okay, accurately with these types of units, for this type of renovation, we are looking at between, $8,000 and $10,000 per unit based on the current condition that I'm seeing right now. That's what you want to get to. You just don't want to be sitting at home being like, oh, well, the rule of thumb, it's like X number of dollars per square foot. You have no idea until you get on site. So you got to bring somebody. Property manager likely has a whole lot of experience. They can tell you firsthand, or a contractor. Now what you're going to do is you're going to do what I call your second pass. This is where you're going to take the first pass, the rough work you just did the first time around, and now you're going to take out all those rough numbers and put actual numbers in. So this is from you and your property manager walking through. This is you and your insurance guy walking through. This is you and the contractor walking through. You're going to take that rough kind of stuff just to see if it fits inside your box, and now you're going to put real numbers in. And you're going to take a lot more time building out this model here, your second pass, because this is what you're going to start. This is the foundation of all your subsequent models and iterations of it. So at this point in your second pass, you should know for sure whether or not this property meets your criteria. Your criteria could be, hey, X amount of internal rate of return annualized over 5 years for your LPs. If that's what you're looking for, great. If you're buying it on your own, hey, what's my equity multiple? Like, for instance, right? Everybody has, or what's my cash on cash return? Whatever metric is important to you or metrics are important to you, that's what you should be looking for in your second pass. You should have as much accurate information as possible. Now, what happens from here? You do your second pass. You may do another site visit if there's still a question mark, right? But most often, if you do a solid site visit, you're going to get as much info as you need. Now you're just going to take your second pass that you do, and you're going to have version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4, ad nauseum, over and over again. Some deals, we have 20 different iterations as we keep making tweaks through the underwriting model and we change things. Now, what can change? Well, number one, you're going to look at financials. And this is part of pre-offer due diligence. You're going to be looking at the T12, the trailing 12. You're going to be looking at the rent roll. You're going to be verifying things. And oftentimes when you're looking at the T12 and rent roll, you're going to have questions. And this is what underwriting, the analysis process, really is. It's an exercise in asking questions, right? You're going to look at a bunch of documents, and that information is going to prompt you to ask a whole bunch of questions. Now you're going to ask those and get answers back. Now those answers are going to prompt further questions. We're basically detectives trying to understand the property and what's been happening in the business of the property just through financial statements and visiting the asset. So we got to ask a whole lot of questions, right? So we got to look at the financials. What's the rent roll? What's the bad debt? What are the expenses like? What's the staffing costs like? Do we see a very high number put in for contract services? If so, let's ask why. Find out, hey, like we see this number's really high with contract services. What's going on? There may be a very valid reason for it. If so, great. At least now you know. But if not, let me ask again. And then you're going to dig and dig and dig until you find the real answer. Maybe it's just mismanaged. You don't know. But until you start uncovering this stuff, you're just guessing. So you got to get to the real answers. So you're going to look at the financials. So you want a T12 and you want the rent roll. Now, if you can't get the T12, if it's a mom and pop type of shop, get the last 6 months. But what you don't want to do is end up analyzing and assessing a property based on the last 2 or 3 months. Why? That's too short of a period of time to look for trends. You're looking for trends, and there's no trend in 3 months. The graph would look like this, right? It's not going to tell you anything. But if you're looking at a vacancy, so let's say this is a graph over the past 12 months, maybe vacancy is going to look like this, and then it's going to start rising up again. If that's the case, well, what's going on with vacancy? You want to ask some questions here and figure out what's going on. Maybe there's a valid reason. Maybe there's not, but you got to uncover this type of stuff. So at this point, you should, before you put in an offer, have the financials, T12, rent roll. You want to have a full understanding of all the expenses, the staff costs, management. How is an asset being managed? And you also, in your due diligence process, want to understand what's going on with competition around. So you're going to look for comps, which is comparable properties. Hey, what are my apples to apples comparisons? Maybe you're looking at a 1980s vintage build and there's 3 in the neighborhood, you should be walking around those 3 other properties. And you should probably be secret shopping them and asking, hey, I'm looking to rent a unit. Can you give me a tour? What are your pricings? What are my options? If you're full, how long's the waiting list? What deposits do I need? Can I bring a pet? All that type of stuff. You should be secret shopping your competition. Why? You need to understand before you put in your offer what the market rate is for those types of units, how much demand is in the market for those types of units. Maybe you're looking at your competitors and every 2 and 3 bedroom is full, but there's a huge amount of vacancy for one bedrooms. And if you're looking at buying an asset that has a lot of 1 bedrooms, well, you better know that, because you're going to be soft in terms of renting out your 1 bedrooms, right? You have to know this. But the broker's not going to tell you that, because the broker's trying to sell the property. The seller's not going to tell you that. Who's going to tell you? You have to figure this out. And you do this by doing due diligence. You got to walk the property. You got to shop the competition. Okay. So you got to look for comparisons. And then you're looking for upside too. So you are looking for proof of your business plan, right? So if you have a whole bunch of vanilla or basic units, right, and they're renting at $1,500 a month, and you want to go in and renovate, you need to find proof. So you want to find other properties that are similar in the area who have done those renovations, and what kind of rent premiums have they achieved. Maybe they took their rents from $1,500 to $1,750. If so, you want to walk those assets and really find out, hey, is this a true apples to apples? If I do kitchen doors and flooring and countertops, is this all they did over at this place? Yeah. Oh, they also added backsplashes and vanities. Great. I'll add that to my underwriting, my second pass, those additional expenses. But hey, if I can achieve a rent premium of $250 per unit just by doing that, because it's proven in this market, amazing. But the best place to look for proof is actually in the asset. So the best thing you can do, or the best thing you can find is, hey, we've actually tested doing these 3 types of renovations, and we found that this type of renovation gives us the best bang for our buck. So out of 150 units, we've tested 20 units at this level of upgrade, and these are the actual results for the past 6 months. Beautiful, right? You're still going to look for apples to apples with other assets and other buildings, but there's nothing better than having it tested on site at the asset you're looking to buy, because you can trust those numbers because it's at that asset, right? As long as the rent roll and everything lines up, you're good to go. Now, what are some things that you want to look for? Some red flags in terms of the rent roll, because some people can be a little bit tricky. So the very first thing you want to look for is you want to look at lease ups. Okay. So let's say, and this is why T12 is really, really important. Let's say for the first 8 months of the year, the property was operating at 86% occupancy, right? Now, 3 months before they listed the property for sale, all of a sudden it went from 86% to 95%. 9% increase. Is that suspicious? Yes. Why? Because for most of the year they operate at 86, and magically right before they decide to list the property, it fills up. Now, why would a seller want to do that? Well, number one, the numbers look better if you can say it's 95% occupied versus 86% occupied. Looks a lot better. But also remember how commercial assets are valued through the NOI, right? Net operating income. So if we can fill up the vacant units and have more rent coming in every single month, that's going to increase our net operating income, and that in turn will increase the value of our asset. So it makes the asset worth a whole lot more money. Now, why do you have to be cautious? Well, they were operating at 86%. All of a sudden, they got all these bodies in there. Who did they rent out to? Is it anybody with a pulse? Did they vet these tenants? Did they do credit checks, background checks, or did they just lease to anybody to make the asset look good? So as you're looking through the rent roll, this is what you want to look for. You want to look for the date the lease was signed. And if you see a whole, and let's say we're in October right now, if you see a whole bunch of August and Septembers going down the list, and then it looks like, a whole bunch of people just magically came into the asset right before they listed it for sale, that's a question mark, and you want to dig a whole lot deeper, right? The other thing you want to look for, especially, I'm in Ontario in Canada, right? So we have rent control across the entire province. Our real estate, we invest in the US, but I live in Canada, and we have a lot of viewers and audience in Canada. So what you want to look for as well in your rent roll is how quickly the tenant leaves, okay? Because if you got rent control, you got to wait to get your big rent bump until somebody leaves, and then you have a fresh tenant coming in. So you want to be able to calculate the percentage of your churn, your tenant churn. So maybe 5% every year, 5% of your tenants change over. Or maybe it's 15% every year change over. Maybe there's no changeover and people leave when they die, right? You don't know. You got to figure this out. So you're going to look at your rent roll, and you're going to find the date they started, and then you want to look in the past history of previous tenants, right? And find out how often they choose. So when did they leave? The date they left. And you want to calculate, hey, every year I can bank on 20% of my tenants changing over. Why would this be important? Well, when you're calculating how many units you can renovate, right? So unit renos, you want to be able to calculate, well, how many units every single month you're going to be renovating. If there's people living in there, you're not going to rip apart the whole unit, but maybe three units a month on average turnover. Perfect. So now you're renovating 3 units. As soon as they become vacant, you're going to go in and renovate them. The other thing, the other reason why this is important is when you're looking at cash flow and how much you can bump the rents up. If you're changing over 3 units every single month, you're going to be able to calculate how long it's going to take on average for all of your units to turn over. Now, you're just averaging it out, but maybe it's going to take you 3 years, depending on your churn rate, 3 years to actually increase and bump up the rents to market value on 70% of your units. That's going to impact your cash flow, your cash on cash return for your first 3 years. So you have to build this into your business plan so you know how quickly these are going to, how quickly you're going to be able to raise the rents on so many units. You have to understand this stuff. And this is why we do due diligence. So you've done your first pass. Really, really rough. Does this fit inside our box? You've done your on-site visit, your inspection. You've done your second pass. You've tweaked your model. You're going to continue tweaking it, changing it up. Boom, 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 boom. Now it's time to write an offer. You get your offer done, right? Great. Conditional offer on maybe you got to do some inspection. You got to get your financing depending on your market. There's going to be certain things you're going to put in there. Now what? Environmental studies, you name it. Okay. Now you're doing true due diligence. Now you're going through with a fine-tooth comb to make sure everything's exactly how you think it is. Because remember, when you did your site visit the first time, you probably got into a handful of units, but not every unit. If you got 100 units and you look at 4, that leaves a lot that's missing. So now you're going to go through. You're going to get up on the roof or the roof. You're going to do your roof inspections. You're going to make sure the roof is exactly how it is. Maybe the broker told you it was 10 years old. You get up there, maybe it needs replacement. Maybe the shingles are faulty. Maybe most of the roofs are 10 years old, but there's 3 or 4 that are 20 years old. Well, in that case, you got to plan for that. You have to verify all of this info. So you get on top of the buildings, you look at it. Perfect. You're going to go into every single unit. Why? Maybe they just showed you the really pretty 4 units that they had available and a whole bunch of units are crap. Perfect. So at the asset we just closed, Atlas, right? Just in St. Pete, we found these rooms that we didn't even know existed, right? So we were able to go in and we're going to do some conversions, but we just didn't know because we weren't able to get in them on the first inspection. So we go through, we've got your contractor, and you're going to go through and look at every single unit. Now, what you want to do is you're going to create a scope of work. A scope of work for every single unit. You're not just going to say, hey, with this asset, we're just going to average to $10,000 per unit. No, you're going to go through unit 1 all the way through, unit 100. It doesn't matter. And every single unit, you're going to go through and create a scope of work. Why? That's how you get the most accurate quotes from your contractors. You have to create a scope of work. Plus, it prevents misunderstandings. If you just go through with the contractor, you're like, oh yeah, we got to renovate this. You guys may be on different pages, but if you have it written out, hey, we're going to do this and this and this and this and this unit. Next unit, oh, well, this is in good condition, so we just have to do this and this. This unit, oh, this is a bad unit. We got this. After you've got a whole scope of work done, there's no misunderstandings, your price is accurately quoted, expectations are set. That's what you want, right, when you go through. So you're going to create your scope of work. Boom, 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 boom. You're actually going to get your rates and everything for financing. You're going to get your insurance quotes in. Everything's finalized. Now you go back again to your model, and you're going to plug in the extra accurate numbers now that you've gone through every single unit. Hey, sometimes you walk through and you're like, hey, we actually overestimated. This deal's a lot better than we thought it was. Amazing. Sometimes you walk through and you're like, oh, well, now I've got an extra $100,000 of expenses I didn't think that we needed. Back to the drawing board, right? But you have to do the stuff up front before you close, because after you close, it's too late. You want to front load all of your surprises to as early in the process as possible. So ideally, before you even do an offer, but sometimes things slip through, you're not able to look at it. So you catch it before you go firm. And if there's cases where the seller's advertising, hey, the roofs are like 5 years old and a whole bunch are 20 years old, well, now you can go back to the seller and say, hey, listen, you advertised it was this. And sometimes the seller doesn't even know, right? Hey, just kind of challenging on this, you're telling us the roofs are 5 years old, and now we found there's 5 roofs that are 20 years old. These have to be replaced. Like, what are we going to do about it? Right? And now you can have that conversation, but you have to do your due diligence. Also, your property manager is likely going to be able to help out with the financials, right? You're going to do a financial site visit or inspection, and you're going to go through and just make sure everything adds up. So going through the accounts, going through the rent rolls, verifying that this rent is actually being paid, because sometimes what happens is they tell you, hey, tenant A is paying X amount per month, but when you actually look at it, oh, well, they're actually paying this. Why? Oh, yeah, we forgot we threw in free this for whatever. We gave them this incentive and we forgot to add it. You got to verify the information, like most important part. But once you go through all of this, now you know exactly what you're dealing with. You can plan for it. You can come up with plan B, plan C, but you got to do your due diligence. All right. So this is exactly what you want to do when you are doing due diligence, when you're looking at acquiring an asset. All right. So if you're interested in learning more about like the process and getting into your first apartment building, you can just go to theapartmentaccelerator.com, book a call. We can help you out with that and help get you started. Maybe you're moving from single family homes to apartment buildings like I did. Maybe you're starting from scratch. That's okay. We can help you out with that. All right. So hopefully this was helpful. Due diligence, huge piece of the puzzle here. Huge piece of the puzzle, but very, very, very important to do. You don't want to skip out on due diligence. So, we got a question, right, Robbie?
Natty said important facts will be to confirm the time of leases and expiration.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And remember how I was saying you're looking here and then you're looking for your dates? 100%, right? You got to calculate your churn. 100%. Yeah. Really great point. So we go live every single Monday at 12 o'clock Eastern. So I'll see you next Monday. But tomorrow, tune in for the bullpen. That's where we cover sales, building out sales teams. I'll be sharing our own experience building out our team on the other side of this wall. I can hear the guys are busy today, which is good. Awesome. All right. I hope this was fun. I had fun. I'll see you guys next Monday for the Real Estate Show. See you then.